This is Mark L. White with Health Hacks, and I am so honored today. We have Dr. Harry Adelson of Docere Clinics. And I actually met Dr. Adelson. We spent some time together in, was it Scottsdale, Arizona?
That's right. Yeah. At the Consumer Health Summit, Michael Fishman's Consumer Health Summit.
And what's amazing is I've been in this industry now for 20 years and working in the fringes of stem cell therapy. But when Dr. Adelson was talking about what he's doing in Park City, and really, you've done a lot for this industry. But like what impressed me was your story, how you got into it. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure, Mark. So I originally got into regenerative medicine through rock climbing. I was in naturopathic school, and my entire life sort of revolved around rock climbing. And I had this bad injury in my right shoulder, and I tore the cartilage. I went to a surgeon. He said, "Well, I can cut that out with an arthroscopic surgery, or I can give you steroid injection. Both of them will probably give you short-term relief. Will probably give you problems in the long term. What do you want to do?" And I thought, those are my choices. Like, that's it. That's all medicine has to offer. I was like 25 years old. I was in great health, and I was in naturopathic school. And in naturopathic philosophy, the number one guiding principle is called vis medicatrix naturae, the healing power of nature. And I was introduced to Rick Marinelli, who was the first naturopath to do regenerative injection therapy. We also call it prolotherapy. He injected my shoulder with natural substances to basically trick the body into thinking that it had been injured, thereby launching the body's natural healing cascade. And that worked so well that my life path sort of unfolded before me, and I learned how to do regenerative injection therapy, and I did that for 6 years. And then platelet-rich plasma came along, and the concept of platelet-rich plasma is identical to regenerative injection therapy or prolotherapy. You're taking blood platelets, which are responsible for launching a healing response. Like whenever you have an injury, platelets go to the area. So I started doing that, and it worked so much better than prolotherapy that I completely transitioned over. And then in late 2009, I had a patient ask me to put bone marrow stem cells into her knee because we'd gotten her to a certain point, but we just couldn't get her any better. And I said, "Laura, I don't know how to do that." And she said, "Well, then learn." I said, "Laura, there's a guy in St. Louis who does this, or that I've heard of. You can go to him. He's an MD." And and she said, "I don't want your friend to do it. I want you to do it." And so I learned how to aspirate bone marrow. And I'll let you in on a little secret, Mark. It's not that hard to do. And I started doing that, and it worked so well that I knew that was the future of regenerative medicine. And for the past, at this point, 11 years, have had the privilege to experience all different types of stem cell treatments. In the early days, there were very few people in the United States doing it, so I had no one to learn from. So I traveled through South and Central America. And as you know, I speak a little Spanish, so I was able to spend a lot of time in Colombia, spend a lot of time in Ecuador, spend a lot of time in Brazil, learning from the people who'd been doing it the longest. And with my own personal psyche and my own mindset, I was a huge Frank Zappa fan when I was a kid. And Frank Zappa's his lyrics were very subversive. I mean, it was really about sort of like taking the system, taking the man head on. I mean, he was mostly interested in tackling the entertainment industry and pointing out the hypocrisies of the entertainment industry. But as a naturopathic doctor who was a Frank Zappa fan, like I kind of operate under different rules, and I'm very grateful for that, because one of the things that I see with a lot of my MD colleagues is who get into regenerative medicine, get into stem cell medicine, is they have to go through a period of unbrainwashing themselves. Well, I've never been brainwashed, so I don't have to unbrainwash myself. So what that has allowed me to do is pick and choose different modalities that I determine are safe and effective, and sort of combine them. So the way we do it here is different than anyone else is doing it. And it's largely because of this sort of attitude, of this rock climbing attitude of we're going to get this person better, whatever it takes. And I don't really care how we do it.
Yeah, you're starting with like the patient's needs in mind, and you're not looking at what insurance covers. You're not looking at what is the old paradigm. You're saying, what have I seen in the world that I know works? It's interesting that like South America would be on more of a cutting edge than North America. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's largely because of the FDA. You know, we have an FDA who is they believe that their primary reason for existence is patient safety, and that's noble, and that's, you know, that's reasonable, but it's you can take it too far. I mean, you can take a treatment that's totally natural and safe with a great track record and say, oh, it's completely unproven and potentially dangerous. Well, that's really easy to say. But if you've been doing it and you see how well it works, and clearly I'm biased, I mean, that's, you know, but I also don't really do any advertising. Like, I have this practice that grows pretty much entirely by word of mouth. Some of like just patient to patient, some celebrity patient, sort of broadcasting their experience. And, you know, if this stuff didn't work, and if I had a closet full of dead bodies, don't you think that would be an issue? Like, don't you think after 10, 11 years in continuous stem cell practice and 20 years of regenerative medicine, don't you think it would have come to a stop by now? That's one reason. The second reason is because it doesn't fit, what I do doesn't fit into the conventional medical model. Right. And that's probably the number one reason, actually. I probably should have talked about this first, because, you know, if you look at how our system works here in the States, we have this third-party payer system. So you're my patient, I'm the doctor, but the insurance company is actually the client. You're not my client. Like, I have to negotiate with these guys to get paid, and they dictate what I can and can't do and under which conditions. And the insurance company and the hospital are separate entities, but they're completely interdependent upon one another. If one of them dies, the other dies. Like they're both profit
organizations too, at the end of the day.
They are publicly traded companies. They are publicly traded corporations, which means that they are mandated to maximize their profits. And if they don't, they can be sued by their shareholders. So yeah, I mean, they're profit driven, sure. You know, God bless America, like that's fine, but it's not okay when then the FDA is saying, you have to do it this way. This is the only right way to do it, because otherwise it's just too fringe and too weird. And, you know, this is a free country. People do have the right to choose their healthcare, whether it's, you know, a good idea or not. Like, it still is a personal freedom. So I'm just grateful. You know, there was a point when I was first learning stem cells, and I watched my first bone marrow aspiration in a surgical suite performed by an orthopedic surgeon, and I was overwhelmed. And I was like, I can't do that as a naturopath. Like, that's just too intense. And so I was actually going to go back to medical school. I was going to go back to like one of the Caribbean MD schools or something like that. And I dropped out of my practice and was studying for MCATs. And, you know, I spoke to my friend Ross Hauser, who's the most famous prolotherapist in the world. And he's an MD. And I told him my plan. And he said, "What, are you crazy?" He said, "Do you know the M doesn't stand for magic?" He said, "You're much better off as a naturopath. Naturopaths are supposed to do weird stuff." And he went on to explain how he'd been sort of persecuted by his specialty board. At that time he was in Chicago, where the AMA is. The AMA home office was like a block from his practice, and he really had a lot of problems. And he said, you know, so anyway, he convinced me that I'm just better off in my own orbit here. And fortunately, the Attorney General of the state of Utah agrees with me.
Well, Utah is actually, when it comes to progressive medicine, I would say Utah is probably one of the best states to be in.
Yeah.
But, you know, what we're talking about is not medicine. And I know, I know you understand the regulations. We talked for a long time, but because you're using your own bone marrow, we're not talking about a medication that the FDA needs to approve. We're talking about your blood, your stem cells, your bone marrow. I know when we're talking about exosomes, and you're seeing a lot of misinformation out there, because now doctors are like getting into this, but they're really not doing stem cells. They're treating you with exosomes. Could you explain that a little
Sure,
bit?
sure. So there's different types of stem cells, and there's different ways to procure them, and there's different ways to apply them. And the most basic type of stem cell, there's many different types of stem cells, but the most basic type of stem cell that we use in regenerative medicine is called the mesenchymal stem cell. And the mesenchymal stem cell exists, we have mesenchymal stem cells in every tissue in our body. And their job is to maintain the health of their microenvironment. So whenever you have an injury, it's the mesenchymal stem cell that steps in, and it's not even so much about them turning into the target tissue as it is them signaling to the damaged tissue to repair itself. So what we're doing in, what I do in my clinic is we take mesenchymal stem cells from a person where they still have a robust population, so maybe they've got, say, for instance, a dehydrated intervertebral disc, and their back, low back pain, for instance. That area is probably depleted in stem cells because of chronic injury, because of repetitive injury, because it's just the body hasn't been able to keep up with maintaining the health. So we take the stem cells from an area of your body where you still have a robust population, and then inject them into these, into these damaged areas, thereby launching the body's natural healing cascade, which to what you said at first, this is drugless medicine. This is why I am convinced this very much falls into the realm of naturopathic medicine, because it's drugless medicine. There are no medications used. I don't even use, I work with anesthesiologists, so my patients sleep through it, but I don't even use local anesthetic. I don't use any medication. It's just the person's own materials. So there's two types of, there's two tissues where you can get mesenchymal stem cells easily. There's lots of tissues that have it, but there's two where it's reasonably easy to harvest and concentrate or isolate. And that's bone marrow and fat. Well, bone marrow has been used since the 1970s in cancer therapy. So fortunately, we're on pretty safe ground with the use of bone marrow, because it's just considered an off-label use. It's approved for use in the treatment of cancer. If you bombard somebody with radiation, like first you take out their stem cells and then bombard them with the radiation, which kills all the stem cells, and then you give them back some of the stem cells, or you give them someone else's stem cells. Where we run into trouble is with the use of fat, because with fat, we actually have to put the fat through what's called an enzymatic digestion. We
have to manipulate it.
Yeah, we have to sort of put it through this process where we heat it up and soak it in an enzyme and agitate it, and it takes about 45 minutes. And the FDA considers
you're a drug company now.
Yeah, they consider that drug manufacturing, which is crazy, because there's no aspect to that even remotely resembles drug manufacturing, but they get to make the rules. So there's currently a case in the circuit courts, FDA versus a friend of mine, Mark Berman, and it's just been dragging on for years. And the outcome of that case will determine the fate of the use of fat-derived stem cells.
I think one thing you said about naturopath and drugless medicine, and my wife is Colombian. I've been to Colombia a dozen times or more. And what amazes me is they try to treat you with everything natural before giving you a pill for anything. So even like my kids get sick, my wife's giving them lime juice and all these things that, but it works. But in the US, I would bet and venture to say that we use more drugs per capita than any country on earth. And the FDA's role also is to promote the use of drugs, not to figure out how do we create more drugless opportunities.
This episode is brought to you by
Gainswave. If you're a guy who is not achieving optimal performance in the bedroom, and you've tried the pills and you've tried the shots, and you're looking for an all natural way to boost blood flow in the penis, Gainswave is evidence-based and proven. Go to gainswave.com and find a provider near. Do you see that?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to launch into too heavy a political discussion, but yeah, I mean, it's a flawed system. I mean, it is, the system is not, people sort of have this idea that the decision making for all things, how medicine is practiced, that there's this sort of council of sages that make these decisions, and like Obi-Wan Kenobi's in there, and, Gandalf the Grey is in there, and then
these all-knowing beings,
who are basing their decisions on patient well-being, on outcomes, on safety, on all these measures. And the fact is, as we said earlier, it really isn't. It's really based on profit margins.
Now, one of the things I was blown away with, and I saw this video, you showed it to us twice. I saw it when you were at the Dave Asprey Biohacking Conference. I saw it again at the Consumer Health Summit. Your full body stem cell makeover. And, like, I'm 52 years old. I turned 52 yesterday. First of all, if you're using my stem cells, am I getting 52-year-old stem cells?
Well, that's where we use exosomes. So we were talking about mesenchymal stem cells, and then you mentioned exosomes. Now, exosomes, if you go back to cellular biology 101, you remember the picture of a cell, a human cell. And it's this, or the animal cell. So it's, there's the membrane, which is that bilipid layer, which is why it's so important to eat quality oils and not use trashy commercial oils, because then that membrane actually, its characteristics change. Then on the inside, the biggest structure is the nucleus, and that contains the genetic material. And then you have these other, like the Golgi apparatus, which are these sort of pancake-looking things. And then you've got the mitochondria, which of course Dave Asprey is very interested in, and everybody interested in longevity and holistic health. It's really like that's the power generation of our cells is in the mitochondria. But then there's these little vesicles, these little bubbles that when I was in school, 25 years ago, we used to think it was cellular waste. We thought it was like poop. Like we thought that was how the cell like excreted its waste. Well, now we realize that's not the case. Those vesicles are filled with growth factors. And those are in the mesenchymal stem cells. And those growth factors are how the cells communicate with each other. And they're called exosomes. And in the mesenchymal stem cell, they exert this phenomena called the paracrine effect or paracrine signaling. Those exosomes are the very things that communicate with damaged cells and tell them to heal themselves. So what makes your stem cells, 52-year-old stem cells, is as we age, our own stem cells lose the ability to manufacture these exosomes. So what we do is we use placental exosomes. So the laboratory that I use is called Organocell. They're in your part of the world. They're in South Florida. They take placental stem cells, and then they sort of put them in a environment where they think that the host is under duress, it's sort of like a starvation. So they manufacture a bunch of these exosomes, and they put it in a very high speed centrifuge, not like what I have in my office, like a centrifuge the size of this room that costs $1 million. The stem cells go to the bottom, the exosomes go to the top. So you're separating the person's genetic material from the exosomes. They sort of shave off the layer that contains the exosomes. And then we use that, we supplement your 52-year-old stem cells with these exosomes. And what we think that does, supplement, did I say that word?
Yeah,
supplement. We supplement your stem cells with the exosomes. And what we think that does is effectively make your stem cell that of a younger person functionally.
So somebody comes to Park City, and I know you're working with Dr. Amy Killen, who I've known for years, who's amazing. And what I saw, you went head to toe. It was like, remember the $6 million man, the Bionic, what was it, the Bionic Man, where they go in there and everything just kind of regenerates.
Yeah.
This was like a real life regeneration from hair all the way down to the penis. Tell me about those results. Like, why would somebody do it? Are they because they're injured, or they just want to be younger, feel younger? Tell me about it.
Well, let me sort of tell you the background story, how it evolved. So when I first started doing stem cells back in 2010, 2011, my practice was very slow here in the United States because very few people had heard of it. The people I was getting in here were all Wyoming cowboys. And the reason for that is because the earliest adopters of stem cell medicine were the veterinarians. And so these guys had these very expensive workhorses that they wanted to get a couple more years out of. So they would take it to this guy. He would do sternal aspiration on the horse and inject the horses, usually their legs, I don't remember the names of these joints, but they're the equivalent of their wrists and ankles. And they could see with their own eyes how these horses went from not being able to work to being able to work. So they'd say to this guy, well, can't you just do it on me? Can't you do my low back and my neck and my shoulders? And the guy would say, well, no, because I'm a veterinarian, but there's a guy in Park City who does it, which is a short drive from Wyoming. Go to him. So I started getting these busted up wranglers, ex-rodeo champions, welders, guys who had never taken a day off in their life.
Like that show, like that show Yellowstone. Have you seen that yet?
I haven't, no, but I mean,
cowboys.
Beat
up.
Yeah, totally. I say they've exceeded the terms of their warranty, right? So I started getting these guys in, and I do these huge treatments. I do their whole spine and both shoulders and both hips and both knees. And I just completely joking started calling it full body stem cell makeover. Well, then Dave Asprey became a patient in early 2016. And I started getting his sort of followers in. And these are people who are interested in sort of holistic health and longevity and optimizing their function and being as active as they can, as long as they can, and prevention. And I remember I was on a kite surfing trip in south of Tulum in the Siancán Peninsula there. And it was this beautiful sunrise. And I was kind of looking out at the sunrise, and Siancán's beautiful. It's this narrow peninsula, and on one side is the Caribbean Sea, and the other side is these beautiful lagoons that are like manatee preserves. And I was looking out, and I was like, what's the next contribution I can make to stem cells? And it came to me. And what came to me was my experience with rolfing. And rolfing is a type of body work. It's a deep tissue massage where you methodically go through the entire body from the top of your head down to your toe and work all the fascia in your entire body. And I thought, what if I could be the rolfing stem cell practitioner? What if we could just do the entire body And I thought, well, we're kind of already doing that with these cowboys. But what we'll do is just sort of formal. And then I invited Amy Killen, who with whom I've been working for years, who is just a pleasure to work with. And she's so talented and smart and great injecting skills. And I said, Amy, what if we just did like basically every injection that we know how to do in a single sitting? I do the entire spine, both shoulders, both elbows, both wrists and thumbs, both hips, both knees, both ankles, great toe. You do the skin of the face to increase elasticity and hydration of the skin, the hair to thicken the hair follicles, and men the penis and women the vagina to optimize sexual function. And she said, that sounds like a great idea. I want that done. And that was really it. It appealed to me. I wanted it done for me. I mean, part of why we developed it is because like it makes sense to us. So that was about a little over 4 years ago. One of the first recipients was Ben Greenfield. Just the timing was such that he was one of the first.
He looks like he's 25 years old.
He's a monster, that guy.
Yeah, he looks like a young guy.
Yeah, he's an animal. And he's coming in. He's actually going to have it done a second time here in March. He liked it so much. So anyway, we've done at this point, we call it 4 hands, full body stem cell makeover. It's me, my 2 hands, and Amy Killen's 2 hands. And we've done hundreds of them at this point, and people, it's quickly becoming mostly what we're doing, and people love them, and they're fun to do.
Now you fly in. I know it's in Park City. It's is it a 4-hour? You put them under? Is it?
Yeah. So people, we ask people to plan on spending a minimum of 3 nights. First, just get here the night before. Then the morning of your procedure, you don't eat or drink anything. You come in, meet with me, meet with Amy Killen. So we go over all the detail. We have plenty of time to talk, go over. We've already done our intake, by the way. We first we do the intake by phone or by Zoom, this sort of thing.
Right, get blood work done ahead of time.
Everything's in place before the person gets there. We've already made a decision exactly what we're going to do. And so I like to say, people, we start exactly on time, we finish exactly on time, and it costs exactly what we talked about. So people come in, they meet with me and Amy Killen. We go over one last time over everything. Then they meet with anesthesia. Yes, we sedate everybody. And this is IV sedation, not general anesthesia. So it's not the heavy drugs that you use for general anesthesia that are hard on the brain, hard on the liver. And we don't intubate people. People are breathing on their own, but they're very much asleep and they don't remember anything. So then we, get the person, we start out by doing an ozone dialysis, which is, it's also called EBO2, extracorporeal blood ozonation and oxygenation, where we attach the person to basically a dialysis machine. Blood comes out of one arm, is bombarded with ultraviolet irradiation, which kills all the viruses and any pathogens. Then it goes through a dialysis filter, but instead of being rinsed with water like you do with kidney dialysis, it's being impregnated with ozone gas to hyperoxygenate the blood cells, the red blood cells. Then it goes through another box, exits the filter, goes through another box where it's bombarded with red and far infrared light to activate the mitochondria and back into the other arm. So we purify the entire blood system. Then we get the person on the table, they go to sleep. I get the fat, I get the bone marrow. We process the stem cells, and then we go to work. I do as I said earlier, basically every moving part of the musculoskeletal system, while Amy does the face, scalp, and sexual organs. And then people wake up, and when you watch, when I have visitors who watch one, it looks like the Spanish Inquisition. It looks like brutal. And I'll send you the video, so hopefully you can play it on this. But what's amazing is when people wake up, they feel fine. They really have pretty much no pain at all. If anything, they're a little, they just feel sort of, it's amazing to watch. And then, they're kind of sore the next day, and then they're sore for a couple of weeks. And then the benefits really kick in between 2 and 6 months, because this is the opposite of like a steroid injection where you're just taking the pain away temporarily. This, we're planting a garden, and you got to wait for the garden to grow, right?
So if somebody's got acute pain, torn rotator cuff or bad hips, it's not the quick fix right away. It's the long-term.
I don't treat acute injuries and the reason I don't is because it might just get better on its own.
Mhm.
You know, I really only treat people who've had pain for at least a year, because if you've had it for a year, it's probably not going anywhere. It's not going to get any better. It's just going to get worse.
Have you ever done like epigenetic testing on some of the people going through the stem cell makeover, where you can see actually their DNA showing that they're getting younger or they're aging at a, because I would think it would help you at the DNA level, but just any thoughts
Yeah,
there?
there are reports out there of that epigenetic testing actually reversing aging. Me personally, we just did our first on us, like on me and my wife. We did our own just like 3 months ago, and we're just sending in the second batch to see. So I haven't, we don't have any data yet.
I did that test, and I turned 52, but I think the test told me I was 47 years old. So
Oh, that's great. That's
I guess
great.
I'm beating it by a little bit, but I want to do this. My wife wants to do this. Like, do you have a lot of husband and wives that come in?
We do a lot of his and hers. We recently did our first hers and hers, but we do a lot of his and hers. Yeah, and what's funny, I probably shouldn't say this on a broadcast, but what's funny is most people, when we do it, like the husband will frequently go first, then the wife goes second. So husband goes on Monday, the wife goes on Tuesday, or sometimes it's the other way around. But we'll do them on separate days so they can kind of nurse each other afterwards. Sometimes we'll get people who are extremely competitive and they'll do it on the same day and then hire somebody to come in and take care of them. But yeah, we do a lot of his and hers.
And I know it's not, one thing I remember, it's not cheap, but you did something special, and this really stood out. Like this whole thing about giving back to veterans, or you had a program for people who could not afford it.
Yeah.
What is the price of the full body makeover, and what do you do for veterans?
Yeah, so the full body stem cell makeover is expensive because it's a tremendous amount of work. It's kind of like, imagine, the Four Seasons. Like the Four Seasons is always going to be expensive, and the reason is it's an expensive facilities. It's lots of expensive people. So I mean, that's kind of what it. My facility costs a fortune to run. I have all these highly trained people, and we use a lot of expensive material. I mean, it's expensive.
You don't, when it comes to your health, nobody wants cheap. You want the best. So
exactly.
So
the full body stem cell makeover, the four hands, where it's me and Amy, it starts at 60,000. So 60,000 is like the base price. But if people want to add, which many people do, want to add additional vials of exosomes, then it just goes up from there. So, but 60,000 is the base. But keep in mind, we just do it once. Like it's a one-time thing. It's the closest relative in medical practices is like hair restoration, where you go in once and it's this expensive thing, but then the benefit is very long lasting. And the absolute soonest with full body stem cell makeover that we would do it a second time, like in the case of Ben Greenfield, would be like 5 years later. When on Christmas Eve of 2016, I had a stroke out of the blue. And I was, my wife rushed me to the hospital, and it was determined that I had a bacterial infection of my heart. So, the surgeon came in and he said, well, the good news is we figured out why you're having these strokes. The bad news is you need an aortic valve replacement in 2 weeks. And, I was stunned. And I found out a year later that it was probably from bad dental work. It was probably from cavitations that were harboring bacteria that was getting into my bloodstream. But undergoing an open, cardiac bypass sternotomy, they had to open me up. It was the most painful thing I've ever, it was on a scale of 1 to 10. Every single patient I talked to, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain? This was a 10. And I had never experienced a 10. And it turned out to be a gift. And it didn't feel like a gift at the time. But what I realized is that even though my practice was sort of getting fancier and like, we're growing and these sort of interesting things, working with the different celebrities and that kind of thing, at its core, my practice is about getting people out of pain. And living with pain is a curse. It doesn't, may not kill you, but it destroys your quality of life. And one of the things we know about longevity is that one of the key factors in people who live long lives is that they have a purpose in life. Well, if your purpose in life in any way involves the use of your body, then living with pain in a very real way impacts your purpose in life. So it sort of became clear to me when I was in the hospital recovering that the greatest advancement in medicine doesn't do anybody any good if they can't afford it. So we developed the tithing program. Mm-hmm. So what that is first we determine that people are living below poverty line. Once we've determined that, then there's two pathways for enrollment. One is for combat service veterans. If you've served this country in combat, I'm happy to do the treatment at no charge, no further questions asked. Like, let's do it. If you're not a combat service veteran, then the pathway for enrollment is I will do the procedure in exchange for community service. Mm-hmm. Boys and Girls Club of America, Habitat for Humanity, the VA hospital system, and then there's a local Park City Christian Center for locals. And so we've been doing that, I guess, about 3 years now. We do about one day a month, and it has been, I just really encourage. I came up with the idea because I didn't come up with it. I heard a doctor talking about it at a conference, and she said, please steal my idea. And I did. And so if there's any doctors listening, please steal my idea, because it's just phenomenally rewarding. I get to work with these terrific people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it.
I think giving back, like if you have a special skill or a special gift, where you get true happiness in life is giving that to others. And I think that to me was an amazing story. And I think what you're doing is fascinating. And we could talk hours about all the different things, because we talked hours about this stuff. But I want people just to hear the story, the full body stem cell makeover. Anybody interested, it's docereclinics.com. We're going to have the link in the show notes. I know that video is impressive. We'll have a link to that video.
And on my homepage, there's a link to a 60-minute documentary film made by Nick Nanton, mm-hmm. who sort of told my story, and it's free to watch. And then also I have a book, an ebook that's free to download. So
this one here,
yeah. So it's that an ebook version is free to download on the website. If people want to hear the whole story, it's right there.
So it's an amazing story, and I recommend to anyone listening to this, spend some time learning about Dr. Adelson's practice, learning about this stuff. It's all cutting edge. You are the guy. You are the guy when it comes to stem cells, and I really appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. I know you got up really early in the morning to do this, but thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure, Mark. It was such a pleasure meeting you and your lovely wife, Liliana, that I'm just happy to do it.
Yeah, my wife keeps asking, when are we going to Park City? So I need to figure that out. And I know we both want to get this done. So.
Okay. Well, we're here. I got a long lease on this place. I'm not going anywhere.
I know you're not. Thank you so much.
Thank you.